G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope you are super well. The Rumours are now running hard and fast. I haven't spoken about the Z8 probably since last year. Haven't made a video because it's going to get here when it gets here, but it does feel like things are getting to a little bit of a fever pitch. And if the latest data, which has been dropped on Nikon Rumours, if it's true, well, indeed, we have a mini Z9 on its way. And this is, from my perspective, and I'm sure plenty of people will disagree, and plenty of people will agree, this is the D850 moment that we've been waiting for since the Z6 and the Z7 arrived. This is the D850 replacement. But I would like to tender that this is more than the D850 replacement. It's so much more, and it is also a D700 moment. See, when the D3 came out, a little bit later came out the D700. It had the same sensor in it, but it was a cut-down version of that camera. So Nikon showed us one way that they would do a flagship and a semi-professional enthusiast camera for less. It was a little bit cut down, it had a few less features, certainly less controls, and a smaller battery. Yet the sensor, to the best of my understanding, was the same. Now, it appears, if this rumour is true, and we still don't know, hopefully we will know soon, but if this rumour is true, and look, we've been hearing about this for so long, it would be hard to think that it's not, but let's take all of this with a grain of salt. Still, that the Z8 is a mini Z9, and this also is a D700 moment. But let's move on from that and talk about more the D850 moment. So we've been waiting for a D850 replacement, I suppose, for the last 4 or 5 years. And before we go any further, I just want to talk about this. Yes, this is the new 26 2.8 Pancake. Here is a shot from this lens. Yes, I will do an unboxing and a first look really soon, but I'm impressed by the build quality, the image quality of this tiny, tiny little lens. All right, let's keep going with the video. Yes, indeed, a D850 moment is upon us. It's been 5 or so years since the Z6 and the Z6 II first arrived. And people even back then were saying, well, why don't we have the mirrorless version of the D850? And I said at the time, why are they going to replace the D850 a year after they have released the D850, when at the time it was still considered perhaps the best all-rounder DSLR ever made, and it had only just been released, and it was still constrained because it sells so well. To the best of my understanding, it has continued to sell well through its entire lifespan, even up until recently, as it still commands a really high price tag. But here it is, the Z8. Is it real? Not only do we have specs, but we've also seen a full image of the front of the camera. Again, we don't know if it's real. It looks real, but you know, who knows, it might not be. The first thing I see by looking at this image is it has 2 function buttons on the front instead of the 3 that we find on the Z9. Now, I love the 3 on the front of the Z9. I do actually use them all. They are all mapped. We have to have some differentiation between the flagship and the Z8, of which we pay a lot more for the flagship, it would seem. Now, we do have pricing there. That pricing is, I suppose, roughly where we think it might fall. I've certainly heard some other YouTubers talk about lower prices, and well, I can't imagine it would go much higher than what we're seeing there. So who knows? Is this the price? Either way, it's cheaper than the Z9. What else can we see in this image besides the 2 function buttons? Well, we can see the button on the top left is a raised button on the Z9 because we have control of all of the different shutter modes. Single mode, continuous frame, delay modes, and so on. They're all there. It looks like that's removed, but we still have the 4 ways that we can control other things. There is reduced functionality, but of course that makes sense because of course this is a cut down body. There is no way that you should be getting more ergonomic access from a camera that is cheaper, the one that is not the flagship. Something else that comes out of this rumour, which makes this very much a D850 moment, is the cards, the choice of card slots. We have a CF Express Type B as well as an SD slot, very different to the ultra high-end Z9 with its 2 super fast CF Express Type B slots. Now personally, this is not a problem for me. Most of the time I do not shoot with 2 cards, and if I do, a high-speed SD will work. But again, this is a rumor. Is it true? We don't know yet. Not much else we can tell from this image. From the specs, very much so. A cut down Z9, 8.3K RAW, 60 frames per second, which is an ultra high spec for a camera like this. We know that the Z9 can shoot 8K for hours, 2+ hours, before it turns itself off and you can hit record straight away and continue to shoot. This is way more than something like the R5 gives you, which still to this day, I'm not even sure it can actually do more than 30 minutes realistically without overheating. So if this is true, this is epic. Now, we don't know how long it shoots for at this point in time, but if it's a real 30 minutes or a real 1 hour, unbelievable. Another thing that this rumor doesn't know is what's happening with the EVF. Will we have an increase in megapixels? Well, the thing about increasing the pixels is you have to send more information to the EVF. And one thing that we all love about the Z9 is how fast it is. It has a super fast EVF, essentially running in real time, with the data coming to the EVF, just like a video camera, and to the card at the same speed. Potentially, this is a newer camera, could have a faster processor in it, and it could send potentially more pixels to the EVF. Don't know. So that's something we don't know, and that's something that stands out for me. Otherwise, we've got the same 20 frames per second RAW, 120 frames per second in JPEG, and so many of the other features that we know and love from the Z9. This rumor states that the screen continues to be articulated, so I would say it's probably once again similar to the Z9, but it's not clear. The Z9 has a very special articulated screen. I suppose it could mean anything. And if you don't know the spec of the Z9 that well, of course, we're still, if this rumor is true, running with the 45.7 megapixel stacked BSI sensor. And of course, one of the big kahunas, probably the most impressive thing to come out of the Z9, of which there are so many impressive things, is that this is the first camera of this sort of class that does not have a mechanical shutter. This rumor states we are sitting in the same place. Wow. Wouldn't that be amazing? So not only do we have this ultra fast sensor, which gives us a whole new way of shooting with an electronic shutter only, but we have this very low speed, slow speed mechanical shutter that's actually there just to protect the sensor. And to me, that is a great step forward. It's a great step forward for a lot of reasons. We've got a sensor, we've got a shutter which is dedicated to protecting the sensor, which means the sensor is more protected. This shutter is not as precision, it's not as high speed, so that means it's not as fragile. And it also means that the number of actuations that this shutter does is significantly, probably a factor of 1,000 times less. It gets used. It only comes on and off when you turn the camera on and off. So this just makes your camera tougher. Not only tougher because it's more protected, but it's protected by a shutter that's designed just for this job, as opposed to some cameras that use their real shutters to protect the sensors. That's not necessarily the best idea, but also then we don't have any other moving parts. And we don't have any ultra high speed moving parts. They simply don't exist in the Z9. And if this is the same for the Z8, I just think this is a really professional, high-end step forward for us, the end user. Not only that, but these sensors are being created with video in mind, which means when they're manufactured, they are manufactured to very high tolerances for very, very long run times, many, many hours on. And because your mirrorless camera, which just has an electronic shutter, is essentially, it's just simply a video camera. That's what they are today, the Z9 being the epitome of that. And they are being designed and manufactured to also be used in the video world. That means that these sensors' runtime are much higher, potentially, than previous sensors. Because if you're shooting video, well, you're doing a lot more frames, aren't you? So if you are a stills-only shooter, theoretically, these sensors will last a very, very long time. You don't have a mechanical shutter, so thus that whole array will last a very long time. And then the shutter that you do have Well, it doesn't get used very often, only when you turn the camera on and off, which is way less than if you're shooting 15 frames per second in bursts and you're doing 5,000 or 10,000 of those a day. For me, I wouldn't even turn my camera on and off 10,000 times, I don't think, in a year. And some people can do that with their shutter in a day. This is the sort of technology that Nikon has brought to bear in the Z9. If they've brought it to bear in the Z8, then we indeed have the new D850 moment. And I believe in the intervening 5 or so years between the D850, the Z7, and now, Nikon are bringing us major advancements in imaging technology. Like we've talked about, we have a shutter that all it does is protect the sensor. We have a sensor which is robust enough to do thousands and thousands of hours of video. For the stills shooter, this would make the Z9 and potentially this rumoured Z8 an outstanding, long life, robust camera. I can't wait to see if this is true or not. Hopefully more information comes out about what Nikon camera is next. We've obviously been waiting a super long time for the next high-end camera to arrive from Nikon. The Z9, it's almost a year and a half ago. Yeah, it's a long time. And I would agree with everybody out there, yeah, come on, let's see the next one. All right, everybody, I'd love to know in the comments below, what do you think about this rumour? Does it sound realistic? And if it is realistic, is this version, and this is the only version we're hearing about now, is this version of the Z8, the rumoured Z8, is it for you? Let's talk about it. It's been so good to see you, and if this is your first time here, I would love to see you again. And please do subscribe. And fingers crossed, some news soon. Bye for now.